Hello, and welcome back to the Movements and Mythos podcast, where we talk all things branding archetypes. Today, I'm really excited about this episode because I'm going to have many case studies on brands that stayed true to their core brand archetype and succeeded, and those that shifted or tried to shift and failed. Now, we are going to feature one of my favorite brands, which is CrossFit in the failure category. But the one thing I want to say before we dive too deep into this is that when we're looking at branding archetypes, this is psychology. This is something really important that we are understanding and building your personal brand in the online space. Leveraging branding archetypes is leveraging the archetypes that Carl Jung had created and applying it to branding. Now, I said on Instagram this morning, the reason why I haven't really talked much about archetypes outwardly on my platforms, even though it's something I've been helping clients with for years, is great power with great power. I'm going to steal the line from Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And the power of archetypes is it allows you to connect with people on such a deep emotional level, and people feel seen because our tribal nature, by very nature, we want to be around people that are like us. And so when we understand archetypes, we understand not just our motivation, but other people's motivation as well. And we can leverage that to build a brand of like-minded people. It can also be used for evil. And I trust my community. I trust you guys. I know you guys are going to use this information for good. And I know you guys are going to use brand archetypes to do more good things in this world because I really believe good people do great things in this world with more money. And I always had this hesitation. And I think the one analogy I saw once of the power of branding archetypes and leveraging branding psychology and brands is that scene in Fantasia. Have you guys seen Fantasia? And I think it's Mickey. And it's like just pure chaos due to his powers, due to the magician powers, right? And it's just pure chaos. And if it's not executed well, it can work against you and your brand as well. If it's not executed well, or if there's an inauthenticity to it where I'm just doing this so I can get something, it's going to create pure chaos in your brand as well. So when we're applying brand archetypes and archetypal psychology to business and branding, it needs to have intention, and then there needs to be a respect for it. Not just respect for you and your brand and who you be, but a respect for the people on the other side as well. So what is the core thing that brand archetypes do to brands? Well, they give the brand a meaning. And the biggest problem, and I want you to pay attention, especially if you're in the spiritual spaces, healing spaces, you consider yourself a good person that truly just wants to help people in this world, I can nearly guarantee your biggest problem is people don't know you. Your biggest problem is you're positioning the tools first. So you're positioning human design, gene keys, BG5, personality tools, astrology, Reiki, whatever. You're positioning that at the front. And when that's front facing in your brand doesn't have meaning. The meaning of your brand is not the gene keys expert or gene keys. The meaning of your brand is not BG5 or the BG5 expert. You do not create emotional connection with people front facing with that. And that's where a lot of people are creating resistance in their business. I was saying on an Instagram live today, y'all are giving me gray hair because I'll go through Instagram stories and I'm scrolling through Instagram stories and I just see information, and I don't know the person behind it. Even if I know the person behind it, even if I know who that person is behind the scenes, I'm not feeling that in their brand. Their brand is lacking meaning and connection. I don't know your why. I don't know what the meaning of your brand is. I don't know where you're going and why I should care or how it's even relevant to me. And this is where people are causing glass ceilings in their business. And they think, I need to work on mindset more, or I need to know more about BG5, or I need to know more about whatever. But the thing you need to do is create meaning in your business. The thing you need to do is create connection in your business. And then everything else is built off of that. So even when we look at archetypes and how we leverage them in my clients' brands and in my own brand, everything is built off the foundation of archetypes. How we look at your strengths in BG5 or human design is based off the archetypes. Because a channel of judgment, for example, 58 to 18, is going to look different in marketing and copywriting and positioning of the brand for an outlaw versus a caregiver or an every woman or every man archetype. It's a completely different expression of it. And how we position the brand is going to be completely different. So when we look at the archetypes even provides the foundation for BG5. Archetypes provide the foundation of how do you show up? How do you speak? How scripted are you? What are the clothes you're wearing? What are your signature pieces? Everything, the aesthetic, write down how you look and how you show up. It provides the foundation for your launches, for your marketing campaigns, for your content strategy, everything. A ruler launch strategy for 2025 is going to look a lot different than the every woman or the rebel, because your audience is drawn to you for different reasons. Your audience is looking to the ruler for a very specific reason. The audience is looking to the rebel for a very specific reason. And so when we create a foundation in the archetypes and we build off of that, you create a powerful brand that stands out. Not just a powerful brand that stands out, but that stands the test of time. Now, here's where a lot of people also mess up. They don't evolve. What Ra-Uru said, for those that know BG5 and human design, is the material plane is always mutating. And if you don't adapt, you die. Ra was a businessman long before he was the clarion for the human design system. He came from a business family in Quebec, Canada, and he understood business through and through. The problem is, if brands are not evolving correctly, that's the nuance, within the shifting niche, within the shifting material plane, which is business, within the shifting marketplace, you get left behind. And there was a big illusion that was created, especially in the spiritual coaching spaces, I'd say 2022, 2023, maybe even a couple years prior, was this idea of ease and just lean back and be in the flow and passive income. This idea of you just had to lean back, you'd receive all this money. You just had to have a passive income, quote unquote passive income. No one ever defined it back then. And you would make all this money. Nothing is truly passive in business. If you are passive in business, you are no longer relevant as soon as the material plane shifts. If you are shifting due to what we're going to see for CrossFit as an example, if you are shifting your brand and your archetype, trying to fit in or trying to follow trends, you're going to get left behind. So that's what I said. Sometimes when and why I was hesitant to bring all this out publicly rather than just working with it behind the scenes with clients is sometimes you can do more harm than good. And whether the head of marketing at CrossFit, Coca-Cola, MySpace understood archetypes or not, they may have, they may not, but either way, they caused more harm than good by trying to shift the core archetype. I've had clients that have taken my brand new, it's available, it's in the show notes, my brand new BG5M brand archetypes quiz. It's a long one. It's like 17 questions. I did it intentionally. I don't want people on my email list. I want the right people on my email list. And if someone came and go through 17 questions, they're not the right people on my email list. Everything was like, do not put that many questions in it. And I was like, watch me. I am the rebel. I am the outlaw. Watch me, because I want to filter people. I want to filter people out. So it's very pop culture heavy because my brand is that also filters people out. And it is, and that's very intentional. It's me. I'm all pop culture. And it's longer intentionally to filter people out. However, the feedback I'm getting is it's the best brand archetypes quiz people have ever taken. It has been years in the making. I've put a lot of thought and detail into it. And on the results page, it's basically a masterclass. And you also receive $100 off private coupon code for my signature offer, Brand by Design 101. So it's pretty amazing. And I've had people go through it and come to me and say, oh, I knew I was going to evolve into the magician. I'm finally the magician. I used to be the every woman, or I used to be this, or I used to be that, but I'm finally this. Your core archetype does not change. It does not change. And I think this is where a lot of people get in their head, where a lot of people don't even know who they are, and they're not allowing themselves to be who they want to be and their brand. So they're trying to be an archetype that's not them. An example I'm going to give you, and I didn't even think about adding her until this moment, was Miley Cyrus. All right. So Miley lived within, I would say, the innocent archetype. I haven't really studied her prior to her Wrecking Ball era because I never watched Disney shows. However, I would say probably like the innocent archetype or the every woman archetype when she was a Disney star. And then she came out with her Wrecking Ball era, and boy, was it ever an era. And the reason people were so shocked was because it was a stark contrast. She was going from like the innocent or the every woman to the outlaw. And it was shocking for a lot of people. Now, for her, it worked out really well. And she positioned it, marketed it, whether intentionally or not, as she went through that phase very well. She weathered that phase really well and turned it into a lesson. However, her trying to change her archetype, I believe temporarily definitely hurt her brand, but long term, she's been able to leverage it. And for her, I think there's a lot of, when we look at child stars, a lot of pressure to be something they're not. So I don't think that every woman or innocent was ever her archetype. She was always the outlaw. She was just pigeonholed and forced into one. And then she eventually broke free. So we have consistent archetypes. I would say the one person that's really successfully, I think it negatively impacted her short term, but successful long term would be Miley Cyrus. We'll look at a couple others that have successfully navigated switches. But I actually want to start here first with those that have failed miserably and trying to change their core archetype. Because again, this is the question I'm getting a lot. Ashley, I think my archetype changed. It didn't. And you have to be very intentional. I think a lot of people need to start looking at their brands more like a business. People have just been showing up, right? People have been telling you the last few years, just show up, just say what you want, just be in flow, just, whatever you want to say, people want to hear it. It's not true, first of all. And second, it's lazy. And third, 2025 is going to demand better from you. If you're just showing up, saying whatever you want and half-assing it, I'm sorry, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, you're going to get left behind in 2025. Period. There's no wiggle room. 2024 was ruthless. 2025 is going to be even more ruthless. So you didn't change archetypes. You may have just finally come into who you are. And I very much recommend being very intentional. If, for example, you've been showing up and you've built a brand the last 5 years based on the every woman, and now you're like, I'm the outlaw and I'm coming out as the outlaw. I would recommend it being very intentional, because you can alienate everyone in your audience right now, especially if you're going from a softer one to the rebel outlaw. Sometimes it's not as bad going the other way, but you're still going to alienate people for sure. But I would recommend it being intentional. There's no better time to leverage. I hear all the time from people, Ashley, I'm not far along enough in my brand to worry about this. This is what you should be worrying about day one. What your archetype is and gaining that foundation should be day one. Why do you want to waste 2 to 3 years floundering and trying to duct tape something together? It doesn't make sense. Archetype should be what you're worrying about and gaining clarity on from day one. Now, let's do a couple case studies. I don't know. I'm kind of a nerd. You may not be, but I think you can learn a lot from this. I want to start with CrossFit. Now, it's so funny. I'm going to use a couple examples here that are brands I didn't resonate with originally until I learned a little bit more about them. And then instantly I was magnetized. CrossFit was one of them. At the time, I was a personal trainer in the bodybuilding field. So I had built a wildly successful brand, Stronger, and I was in the bodybuilding field. And my then boyfriend, who was Scott, my hubby, he did CrossFit. And I was horrified by it. He would bring it up all the time. And I was just like, butterfly pull-ups? Are you kidding me? Speed deadlifts? Oh, I was appalled by CrossFit. Absolutely appalled. And I remember I used to send him videos of CrossFit fail videos and say, this is why I'll never do it. And I can't remember what he had sent me or what I saw, but it was talking about finding the fittest on earth and forging elite fitness. And then I learned about Pukey. Is it Pukey, the clown that's throwing up because he works so hard in his workout? And I was like, I need me some of this. Guys, this is the power of archetypes. Y'all often think I'm crazy, but this is the power of archetypes. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, forging elite fitness? I'm going to be the fittest. This was a brand that the day before I was horrified by. And through the power of archetypes and them positioning themselves as the outlaw and doing things different, all of a sudden I needed in. And within 2 years, I was preparing for regionals. I ended up hurting my back and had to pull out. But I was like so immersed. I got my level 1. I was coaching CrossFit. I was so immersed in the community because it was like-minded people. It was badasses that weren't afraid to work hard enough that they puked in their workout. Those were my people. People that appreciated a badass woman that could lift heavy and kick their ass in a gym were my people. And I am so competitive that the idea of turning fitness into an elite sport was like music to my ears. So that was the power of archetypes. A lot of people are completely unaware of how powerful archetypes are and the immediate resonance they have with our psyche. And that's why I said with great power comes great responsibility. CrossFit positioned themselves as the ultimate outlaw fitness brand. And that was in direct contrast to your big box gym. It was in direct contrast to the Planet Fitness, Orange Theory, everything. It was this idea of challenging, raw, gritty, working out in your garage in these like industrial spaces. It wasn't polished. It was intense, unconventional. It was the outlaw through and through, and I could not get enough of it. I was literally working out CrossFit 4 to 5 hours a day. Funny enough, Power of Archetypes, who was my coach at the time, the brand, which doesn't exist anymore, was called The Outlaw Way. Power of Archetypes. So I had hired The Outlaw Way. I eventually went to work with Invictus for CrossFit and their online program, but Invictus is also based on the Invictus program, the Invictus poem, which is having an unconquerable spirit. You're heavy but not bowed, and having you being the one that determines your future and your fate. So again, power of archetypes. This is, you guys, I'm telling you, if you start to go through your life, you're gonna be like, holy shit, everything comes back to archetypes. Successful brands do. So they had this ultimate. They saw Greg Glassman, whether he realizes it or not, saw a massive gap in the fitness industry and he filled it. What ended up happening is the fall started to happen from leadership scandals. There were tone deaf statements that alienated the core of the CrossFit community and split the core of the CrossFit community. Those statements as well took out the individual, Greg Glassman, that had founded CrossFit. He left. So he bowed out to save the brand because he was the one that had made these statements. He bowed out to save the brand. And I can't remember the corporation and how the business got set up later. However, new leadership moved away from the rebel outlaw archetype. And I don't think anyone understood how to do it properly. But even so, guys, an established brand like that trying to change archetypes mid-story is a fucking disaster. It's a disaster. Either way. So it can be done sometimes, but not all the time. So they moved away from the rebel archetype, which was us versus them, hard work to the point you're puking, forging elite fitness, this very strong outlaw archetype brand, to kind of come into this brand that I would say like they're almost trying to go into the everyman, every woman now, which has further fractured their community and split the community because a lot of people want the old school outlaw brand of forging elite fitness. And I think what the problem they're meeting as well is in trying to rebuild as the every woman after that scandal, they're kind of in this no man's land. All right. So they're in this no man's land because they're too nice now. They're too polished. They're too like, I don't know. I think one of their new trademarked terms is CrossFit is the prescription or something like that is every man, sure. But even for me, I'm like, ooh, no thanks. Like, I'm not even interested in doing CrossFit anymore. Power of archetypes. So what happened is they were too nice for the outlaws they had been speaking to and alienated them, but too gritty for the every woman, every man archetype, and carried a lot of history as the outlaw, a lot of marketing as the outlaw that also alienates the every woman, every man. And a lot of people just won't try it because of that energy that comes with it. So I would say, I'll be honest, I think we're going to see the further downfall of CrossFit over the next couple of years. CrossFit, the company, functional fitness itself is starting to take off. The trademarks and all of the stuff that Greg Glassman had put in place around CrossFit expired in 2024. So that's where we're seeing not a resurgence, but a surge of other functional fitness brands. So I don't think functional fitness itself is going to fall apart. I think CrossFit as a corporation is going to continue to fall apart. Unless in the 11th hour, someone understands archetypes and the original essence of the brand swoops in, I don't know. I don't see it happening. I think what we're going to see is the fall of CrossFit, to be quite honest. And it's because they did not, in trying to follow trends, and they were right. I'm going to be honest with you guys. They're right. If you look at trends, I have clients that are building 7-figure businesses in the fitness space. If you look at trends in the fitness space, there is a trend towards more health rather than extremes, more holistic, and that every woman archetype, every man archetype, rather than extreme fitness, extreme diets, etc. So whoever was in their marketing department wasn't overly wrong within the market trends. What they did wrong is they should have expanded within the outlaw. Hey, CrossFit, anyone at CrossFit wants to hire me, I'd be happy to work with you guys. I love the original brand. Or Greg Glassman, here to help you with the new brand. But anyway, what they should have done is have someone on the marketing team that understood archetypal psychology and archetypes and branding and expand them within the rebel outlaw rather than shift, because it is very rare you are going to see a brand successfully shift. I'll tell you about a couple, but very rare. Number 2, this is a brand that solidified themselves, tried to shift. It went really bad. So it goes down as one of the worst attempts in history, and then went back and saved themselves. And that is Coca-Cola. So when we look at Coca-Cola, they try to do the new Coke, and that sounds like so bad. I'm probably going to be banned now for saying those words on YouTube, but they try to do the new Coke campaign, and they're trying to move into, they were more of like the everyman or even innocent archetype, I would say, to the innovator or creator. I would say that they were trying to move over into that space, like revolutionary. We're creating something new. Well, the problem was Coca-Cola was long associated with more of that innocent archetype or everyman archetype, nostalgia, tradition, wholesomeness, even their marketing campaigns, right? Like it's just nostalgia. We even look at the Budweiser Clydes, like that brings back nostalgia as well when they bring back the Clydes for people that know the original commercials. However, they attempted to position themselves and shift archetypes into more of an innovator archetype. And that was when they launched the new Coke. I think it was in the 1980s they did that. So the problem was their audience didn't want innovation. No one was paying attention to the market. So when we look at CrossFit, someone was paying attention to market trends, but fucked up huge in how to meet market trends. So they flipped the script and went to a totally different archetype instead of staying true to their archetype and evolving within the archetype. But they got it right. The market trends were right. Coke was just like throwing caution to the wind. And it was like, we're not going to ask. We're just going to innovate. Right? So their audience didn't want innovation. Their audience wanted consistency, nostalgia, tradition, wholesomeness. And the backlash was overwhelming. Like I said, this is something you can Google. This isn't like an industry secret. The backlash was huge. And it actually forced Coca-Cola to reintroduce the Coca-Cola Classic and revert to its traditional and original branding. They successfully did it. Obviously, they're still one of the top soft drink brands, but it was like a huge misstep. And it also goes to show, the thing I love about that, or even Apple had missteps but succeeded despite them. It also goes to show that even the top best in the world misstep sometimes. I think a lot of smaller businesses or personal brands expect that you just always get it. You just always know that there's no trial and error. No, even the best of the best in the world, with the best marketing teams, with the biggest budgets, are trying it out in real time and testing. If you're not willing to test, again, well, you're not willing to reinvent yourself. And if you're not willing to reinvent yourself, even if your brand was relevant, you're not going to stay relevant long. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. Because a lot of people as well, I think, especially smaller brands and businesses, it's scary, right? Especially in the age of cancel culture. It's scary to reinvent yourself in real time. It's scary to fail in real time. It's scary to say, I'm going to test this out and then go back to the old in real time. That shit's scary. It's not easy. But when we look at brands like this, we can look at Coca-Cola, one of the biggest brands in the world. They tried something new, did not work. It's gone down in history as one of the worst decisions ever. And they just went back. They're like, all right, whatever. We tried it out. Here's Coca-Cola Classic. And people went crazy. So sometimes it's also just saying, hey, I tried it out. Didn't work. Back to what I was doing. There's no shame in that, my friends. Case study 3. I mean, I could do case studies all day, but I hope this gives you guys, and let me know in the comments. And if you're watching the replay, listening on the podcast, drop me a DM if this helps bring in, 1, the power of archetypes, but 2, the importance of staying within your archetype. MySpace is another example. MySpace gave people creative freedom. It was very much there's argument back and forth, the creator or the explorer archetype. I'd lean a little bit more towards the creator, but different people in branding psychology and branding archetypes say different things for that. I say the creator, but I'd say creator or explorer gave people creative freedom to express themselves, to explore their identity, right? That's where we could get the idea of the explorer. And it was the perfect, like they created the space that at the time, like if you're old enough to have been around for MySpace, I am. It was the coolest thing. In fact, I almost wish MySpace would come back. It was the coolest thing ever. I miss MySpace. However, as Facebook, and here's the thing I talk to my clients about all the time as well. If you are not reinventing yourself, you're going to get left behind because someone's coming up behind you. As well, if you position the tools first, so if y'all are posting only about Gene Keys, human design, astrology, the tools first, and you're not separating yourself by creating emotional connection and emotional resonance with an archetype, well, what happens when someone comes up behind you? And I'm guessing you know exactly who came up and bit MySpace in the ass. It was Facebook. It was Meta. It was Mark Zuckerberg. So as Facebook streamlined, then they did the social media experience and emphasized, what did they emphasize? I want to give you guys a second, even if you're listening on the podcast, so just take a minute. So MySpace promoted individuality. Facebook promoted something very different. And I'm giving you a second to say it in your head first. Facebook promoted connection. It promoted community. It saw a gap in the market and it took it. Business isn't personal, guys. A lot of good people that are starting in personal branding spaces take business too personal. That person's copying me. This person is doing this. That is the point of the material plane. I mean, intellectual property theft is a different story, and that's legal issues, and you have a right to send your lawyers after them. That is also an issue in today's day and age. However, the idea of you seeing a gap in the niche, when you're innovating, when you're ahead of the curve, it means other people are going to be following up on you. They're going to be nipping at your heels. That's what I mean. There's no true passive income in business. So Facebook started streamlining. It saw a gap and it started pushing connection over individuality. MySpace tried to compete on Facebook's turf. was like, all right, I see you, and I'm going to try and match you. But it diluted its core archetype. It alienated its core audience. Instead of, and I've never done a full case study looking into what it could have done differently overall. But overall, when we look at it, any archetype that's starting to see a brand coming up that's different and starting to gain momentum in the space, you want to double down on your core archetype. You want to double down on your promise. You want to double down on how you're different. Y'all don't want to get distracted and start chasing trends or start chasing your competitors, because you're not going to be as good as them at being them. You will always be second. I've had people try to replicate what I do over the years, and they're always second, because you can't be me. You can't think like me. And I can't think like you. That's your unfair advantage. So where brands go wrong is, instead of doubling down and speaking even more to those people that are like, I want individuality, like the me's, they try to play on Facebook's turf. But you will always lose trying to play on someone else's turf if that brand knows what they're doing. If that brand is worth their salt, you will lose. And so what ended up happening is MySpace lost the competition because Facebook created the rules. But they should have doubled down on their core promise. They should have doubled down on who they were and go harder, just like CrossFit, and expanding within that archetype to expand who they're speaking to within that archetype, rather than try to flip the archetype. So those are three of the big examples. I try to pick some from different industries that really messed up, that shit the bed, as I've often said over the years. Now, if we look at brands that successfully evolved within their archetype, there's a lot. The number one, Harley Davidson. I've never bought a Harley, but let me tell you, it's always just spoke to me because of, obviously, I'm the outlaw, Harley's the outlaw. But their core archetype of Harley Davidson is the rebel or outlaw. And it's a brand rooted in freedom, independence, anti-establishment, and values. Now, when we look at Harley Davidson over the years, the identity was very much like giving people the power to break away from societal norms and express their individuality. They evolved, though. The brand had to evolve. So they maintained their core values. They stayed true to the rebel archetype to continue to sell the dream of freedom and the open road, if you will. But they modernized their message to resonate with a broader audience. Because I think even if we go back a long time ago, originally, Harley was more of like the quote unquote bikers, right? So that was a very specific niche, but they successfully broadened their niche over the years to stay ahead of market trends while not alienating their core audience. Now, there's some car brands right now that are really alienating their core audience, but I did not even prepare that segment for today. Oh man. I think, is it Jag? I think they're going to go down as like the car version of Coca-Cola, to be honest. If they revert back, I would say Jag has such a loyal following. If they revert back to their old archetype, I think they can save the brand. If they continue down this direction, I think they're going to really struggle. Again, double down. So when we look at Harley, they had innovation that they brought forward within the rebel archetype. So they introduced more of like different types of quote unquote vehicles you can get from them, right? They position themselves as cutting edge and rebellious, rather than just for those that are kind of more in the motorcycle culture. It was, let's look at what is the trend going on in the broader culture within the rebel, within those that want cutting edge, within those that want rebellious, but are still, aware of the environment, aware of what the market's essentially demanding. So they move their imagery as well from more of that rugged leather-clad bikers. Again, if you're old enough to remember Harley Davidson, it was the biker image, to more of an inclusive, aspirational version of rebellion. So they started to shift to more professionals, to women. I have a lot of ads I've pulled for Harley that have women in them now, and younger women, and not women that are in like a biker gang or anything. Well, I'm assuming it's not meant to be. And younger riders without alienating their core audience. They've done it very, very well. It is not easy, especially for companies like that in the automotive industry. It's not easy right now. So there's a lot of push on, are you environmentally friendly? How are you addressing the environment? But also the core audience doesn't want to lose what made you special, i.e. Jag or Harley. So navigating that difficult terrain of addressing current trends while staying within your niche and not alienating your current niche, it's different. It's difficult. There's going to be trial and error for everyone. People are going to mess up. Those brands that stay ahead are willing to test things out ultimately. So the result was Harley Davidson did not abandon their rebel identity. They expanded it. So they prove that rebellion isn't just for bikers, but for anyone who wants to claim independence and freedom in their life. And Harley Davidson isn't just for you if you're a biker, but if you want to reclaim independence, if you want to feel like the wind in your hair after you've been in corporate from Monday to Friday and you want to spend the Saturday on a nice Saturday with the sun beating down on you, wind in your hair. Now I want to go on a Harley by the beach and just be free and feel free. It reminds me of like riding horses, that feeling, right? It's very different than being in a car. I've never been a motorcycle person. I wouldn't trust myself, if I'm being honest. Wouldn't trust myself. Makes me nervous. But I ride horses, right? So I can understand that sense of freedom that comes with it. And so they've expanded that. Apple, even Steve talked about how Apple shit the bed when he left. So he was fired and then he was brought back on. Apple's core identity, I would say, is most widely accepted as the outlaw, and that's what allowed them to stand out in a time of more ruler type archetypes. So there was this identity that had been about empowering creativity and innovation, but they positioned it. If you look at this is a pivotal, crucial ad that shows Apple. So if we look at Apple and their Think Different campaign, well, what do they say? They're speaking to those that think different. They're speaking to the black sheep, those that, don't color inside the lines, the rebels, the misfits. And they list all these incredible leaders throughout history. And he says something along the lines of, if they were alive today, I know they would use a Mac. And I'll never forget, I was so anti-Apple. I don't even know why, but so anti-Apple. And I saw that ad and I was like, well, damn it, I need a Mac. Again, guys, the power of archetypes. This is the power of archetypes. And so I was like, well, damn it, I need a Mac. Like, I'm like those people. I think different. I'm a misfit. I'm a rebel. I don't draw inside the lines. I need a Mac. And I went out. I got a MacBook Pro. I got all the little tags, air tags for my dogs to track them. Got the iPhone. Got the whole ecosystem. All from one ad. This is the power of archetypes done well. So there was this very much energy of speaking to the misfits and the rebels and the black sheep at a time where other companies in this niche were the ruler archetypes and speaking to other rulers. It was genius. So they didn't just create products. They completely revolutionized the space. And they completely revolutionized, it's the idea of we think different. So iPod, iTunes, like everything they brought out, iPhones, Apple TV, like they're constantly on the cutting edge. And it's all through that rebel archetype. It's just so powerful how Apple has done it. And they have Steve Jobs to thank for it, especially his Think Different campaign. Now, actually, I'm not going to get into it because we'll be too long today. There's something really cool with archetypes with the apple for Apple and the imagery and how that speaks to the psychology. But we'll do that in another episode. I'll talk about that another day. The last one I want to talk about in terms of businesses is Lego. They're the creator archetype, and Lego's foundation is all about building imagination, unleash your creativity. I remember as a kid, I had these Legos where you would build a stable. I had these little Lego horses and I don't think I ever had like the castle ones, but I definitely had all the stable lines for Lego. Now, they almost went bankrupt. Lego was having not a good time. However, they had this community-driven innovation and spirit within the brand, and they turned from this toy company to a cultural icon. Like, I don't even know when that happened, but they expanded within the creator archetype. Okay, so they didn't flip. They didn't flip archetypes, but they expanded within it by simple building blocks within it, step by step by step. So they started to incorporate storytelling into their brand. And then they started incorporating Lego themed movies, video games, collaborations, Star Wars Legos, Harry Potter Legos. They turned what started out as like these little freaking, well, Legos, I don't even know what you call them other than Legos, into a multi-generational phenomenon. And they were at the brink of bankruptcy. But innovation drove them forward, and they did not flip archetypes. They stayed within their archetype. They engaged their audience to co-create with them. They invited fans to submit ideas for new sets, directly involving their fans, new and old, into the creative process. They empowered others to innovate as well. So they didn't abandon their core creator archetype. When they hit hard times, they expanded within it. They expanded new mediums, movies. Like, I never thought there'd be movies and video games on Legos. Are you kidding me? This is my little Lego barn that I used to make as a kid. But they did. They innovated. And I have no doubt that people told them they were batshit crazy. I have no doubt. But then again, they brought in these cultural icons such as Star Wars, Harry Potter into it as well. So collaboration, and you can take that away with your brand as well. Collaboration with the right people is critical. The right people. A lot of people are just, so desperate to work with someone or to expand their brand or gain traction that they're saying yes to the wrong people. Now, when we look at key lessons from these brands, let's touch on Madonna and Taylor as well here. Both of these women, Beyonce as well, understood this of eras. I think Taylor was the first one to really give it that name outwardly and claim what they are. I think she's just a genius and understands branding. However, they all understood eras. Madonna was constantly reinventing herself to stay relevant. This isn't by accident. I know the Swifties think it's just Taylor being Taylor. She's a genius in branding and marketing. It is not, there's no way it's by accident. There's no way. So each of these women have had eras, not just because they're growing as a person, but because it's required to stay relevant. And this is why so many smaller brands, personal brands, coaches, healers are not able to keep traction they've made in their brand because they're not reinventing themselves. They're not doubling down on what worked. They're not doubling down on their archetype. They're getting distracted and seeing what other people are doing and then chasing trends. The hell does that trend have to do with you? Stay focused. These women didn't chase trends. They stayed true to who they were. So Madonna, you can see her different eras, but she was always the outlaw. Madonna was never like the caretaker or the caregiver or the innocent. Oh my gosh. No, she was always the outlaw. Taylor Swift, regardless of her era, including reputation, she has always been the every woman. Always. Every era she's done has been founded in PR and marketing around the every woman and different expressions within it. So both of them have evolved and expanded on that archetype rather than shifting and switching archetypes. That's what's made them so successful. That's what's made them so relevant consistently. Because if they stayed the same, they would have faded away. I'd almost argue that I'd have to look into it more because it just came to me right now. But almost the Spice Girls, like that era of like the boy band, girl band type era didn't evolve. But I have to look more into that. But they didn't evolve. So they went away. And that's unfortunately business. And that's why I also say to my clients, if you want to actually build a business that makes more than hobby money or makes more than occasional money, if you want to actually build a business, you have to think like this. And you almost have to be obsessed with business, because there's no point where it's just passive. And you're like, I just lean back. I created a funnel. Now for the next 40 years, that funnel without any shifts or changes is going to generate me $50,000 a month. And, I posted once this week. So yay me, I'm going to make $10,000 this month. No, that was good marketing by a lot of people. I called it out 5 years ago and people try to cancel me for calling it out. It was good marketing. It sells. Yeah. Easy sells. So a lot of people bought into it and then wondered why their brand wasn't growing. So the key lessons here, what all these brands that have been successful have demonstrated is their archetypes are anchors. Harley Davidson, Apple, Lego, Madonna, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, they've never abandoned their core archetype. I'd actually even say someone that successfully navigated the ruler archetype, which is not easy this day and age, is Mariah Carey. She has navigated the ruler archetype so effortlessly. I just love her. I've always liked Mariah, but I like her even more now because of how she's grown within the ruler archetype. And this is where certain people are struggling, like J-Lo is struggling right now. I don't think they're ever going to be irrelevant, but they are receiving a little bit more cultural pushback. Would be the Kardashians. They would be more of that ruler archetype as well. So even if we look at Mariah, she's never just jumped ship on the ruler archetype. She's evolved within it. So those that work go deeper into their archetype when it appears it's not working. That is against what your natural inclination often is. Your natural inclination is often like, abandon ship. Like, no, my God, I'm too controversial as the outlaw, so I better be the every woman. And then the people are like, what? But I liked you because you were controversial. Right? And so you abandon that, you try to be something different. And here's the thing, like I said, you have to test things out. That is business. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of people or brands that have successfully jumped ship on an archetype. And often you want to double down. And the best time to double down is when you're first starting out. That's your best time to double down. And as well, when we look at when I've always been open and honest about testing things out. I've always been open and honest about the difficulty of it. Like Coca-Cola, sometimes you just have to be like, I tried it, didn't work. I'm going back to what did work. I'm going back to who I always was, but I tried it out, right? And I would say 9.99999 times out of 10, your community is like, oh, thank God you're back. They're not like, ugh, who do you think you are? No, they're like, oh, thank God. Been waiting for this. I've been waiting for your crazy to come back, right? So the successful brands, archetypes as anchors. They use their archetype as a foundation to explore new products, audiences, and cultural shifts, and to navigate all that. 2, audience expansion. Those brands grew by finding new ways to resonate with diverse audiences. So for example, Harley Davidson started advertising towards women. Digital narratives, the movies for Lego and video games. They started to diversify their audience outside of just these little Legos that you put together. And none of these brands alienated their core audience. If we look at it from Taylor Swift, her Eras tour was genius because it also hit on nostalgia, and she had the Taylor version recordings coming out at the same time. She was doubling down on nostalgia. She is a genius at what she does. And there's no coincidence that she has had like record-breaking numbers of everything during this tour. The nostalgia, the archetypes have been so thick. It's like dripping archetypes, dripping sales psychology. And I'm not saying that as a slight. You go, Taylor. Dripping just the everyday woman and connection. And when we even look at the language she's had in a lot of her shows, and I remember, I think it was the Vancouver show, she talked about this as well. She said, whether you're new here or not, like we have all the eras. So if you've been here for a long time, you get to experience all the eras again. And if you're new here, you get to experience the eras for the first time and meet new friends. And now we're a family. Well, genius. Genius. The woman is a genius. So she expanded her audience, but stayed within her archetype. And 3, innovation within identity. They evolved their offerings and storytelling while staying true to the emotional promise of their archetype. Even Taylor during Reputation, she stayed true to the emotional promise of her archetype and the emotional promise of her brand, even during Reputation, which some people wrongly, it is wrong, assumed it was an outlaw or a rebel brand she brought forward then. It is not. It is every woman / every man with a different nuance, with innovation within the identity. Now, when we're looking at avoiding archetypal misalignment in your brand, there are a couple, actually, I would say the number one brand I can think of that's done it well is Old Spice. They successfully switched from the ruler, I would say, over more to like the jester. Now, I'm not up on Old Spice these days and what they're doing, but looking at old school campaigns, I'd say they're the ruler, moved over to the jester more, and they successfully did it. However, archetypal switching almost never works, and it requires it to be executed with such precision and a deep understanding of the new audience. And what a lot of people don't realize, especially if you are a smaller brand or a smaller business, and say you want to do that, right? You're the ruler and you're like, I am no longer the ruler. I've gone through a spiritual awakening and I'm the magician now. It happens. I would suggest is working with someone that understands archetypes, first of all, and execute it with precision. You also need to understand the new audience that is looking for the magician. But further than that, we need to also look at when you're moving over to an archetype, you are now alienating who's currently in your audience. Okay? If you don't have 6 months plus of savings to support you, it's going to be a rough go because you have to build out a completely new audience, especially from such a strong archetype like the ruler. It's not likely the majority of your audience is going to resonate with a magician. In fact, probably most won't. So you also, not only does it need to be executed with precision, but 2, there needs to be a deep understanding of the new audience you're looking to speak to and their pain point and what they're purchasing. A lot of magicians are selling emotions. Emotions are not your transformation. And a lot of magicians do not have clear branding. It's like a line in your business. What does that even mean? Right? So a lot of magicians are leaving a lot of money and impact on the table because they're just not clear in their brand. So we need to now understand the core pain point of the new audience, the psychological motivating factor of the new audience, and then understand that it's going to be a bumpy ride as you switch over because the ruler people in your audience likely not going to resonate with the magician. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. But most successful brand evolutions, I'd say 99%, are evolving by expanding within their archetype, not abandoning it. Not abandoning it. Now, some questions you can ask is, 1, take my BG5 and brand archetypes quiz. That's the most important piece. Have patience. Guys, if you came and answer 17 questions, I don't know how to help you in your business. When I look at the people that drop off, I'm like, dude, if you can't even answer 17 questions, you don't have patience for like 6 minutes of your time, business is probably not for you. I can see if you're dropping off because you don't understand the pop culture reference, but I'm sorry, I can't take the pop culture out of me. It's just not going to happen. It is how I understand archetypes. It is how I started studying archetypes as like a 12-year-old. It's just not going to happen. So you guys, I can understand if you dropped off because of that. Now, when you get your results from the BG5 and brand archetypes quiz that I created, I want you to look at what values are at the heart of my archetype. What values are at the heart of my archetype? And how am I communicating that or not within my brand currently? Or another way you can look at is, how am I out of alignment with that? Number 2, what is the emotional promise of your brand? And is it in alignment with your archetype? And we do this in brand VIP days. So if you want personalized help with this, we do this in brand VIP days. If you are, I'd say the brand VIP days is your best way to go. It's more coaching oriented. So it's the best way to go if you're newer to business, if you are pivoting, or if you're just like, Ashley, I just don't have clarity. Like I am just all over the map and I need to pull this all together in a clear, cohesive brand. That would be your brand VIP day. We will go over this because we're starting with your archetype first and building everything out from there. If you're like, I already got all this and I just need refinement so that I can hit the ground running with like this new brand in 2025 and I want someone to do it for me. I'm tired of worrying if my message is landing. I'm tired of worrying if I'm using the right words. I want someone else to do it. That's a brand to movement accelerator, which is a done for you offer. But you got to, I'm telling you guys, you have got to have a clear brand first. Okay. You have to have a clear brand that I can do a done for you for. If you want support, coaching support, it's the brand VIP days. So 3 is, are you responding to industry shifts without compromising your identity? Are you responding to industry shifts without compromising your identity? I have a new reel up on Instagram that has a great ChatGPT prompt, like pat myself on the back, a great ChatGPT prompt for you to start looking at. Where's your niche going in 2023? Oh my goodness, Ashley, 2025. Because you need to be responding to industry shifts. If you think 2024 is rocky, put on a good bra. Because 2025, the market is demanding clarity. The market is demanding tangible, practical outcomes. You know, what worked? A lot of people are struggling in their business because they're stuck in 2021, 2022. When everyone was like at home during the pandemic and had nothing better to do than to buy courses online and buy shit online and scroll the internet, it was like fair game. Anything worked basically back then. It really did at the end of the day because everyone was online. That is not the case anymore. It's not the case. So if you're still using your outdated 2021, 2022 business model or approach, or you're following someone that's promoting that, 2025 is going to be tough for you. So are you responding to industry shifts without compromising your identity? Now I want you to look at and take inventory of your brand's evolution. Is it aligned within your archetype? And how can you go deeper within it within 2025? How can you go deeper within it within 2025? And I want you to actually look at one last prompt you can look at. This isn't a ChatGPT prompt. None of these are. Consider how your archetype might adapt to current trends without losing its essence. Now, here's the thing. Brands like outlaw brands are more controversial, and especially in times where there is a lot of shifting depending on the industry, a lot of shifts happening. The every man, every woman brand archetype has more universal appeal. The problem with the every man, every woman archetype and the universal appeal, though, is you tend to blend in a little bit. You kind of look samesies with everyone else as you scroll, right? Everyone's in their pastels or their beiges and looks the same, and you get an outlaw that comes into the news feed all of a sudden and has a pattern interrupt. And how does the outlaw do that pattern interrupt? Well, that outlaw comes into the scroll with, the barbed wire choker, the black lipstick, the big chunky hoodies, and talking with her hands a lot. So there's strengths and weaknesses to every single archetype. I refine archetypes with BG5. So again, the 58 to 18 is going to have a different expression if you're an outlaw versus every woman. The 58 to 18 is going to have a different expression if you're a ruler, that royalty, versus the jester. Like that's such a different energy, and it's the same channel in your BG5 chart. So I refine the archetypes and refine BG5, that interplay, to create an archetype that's very unique to you, that creates an energy that's very unique to you. And that's really important. But we want to look at, there's strengths and weaknesses to each. Every woman more likely to blend in, but has more universal appeal. The outlaws, the heroes, the explorers, I'd say even the magicians are more likely to stand out, but have less mass appeal. But the fact you stand out, I mean, when we're talking less mass appeal, we're still talking millions of people, right? All right. How can I wrap this up for you guys? This went a lot longer than I expected. Bless your souls when you guys make it this long. To build a brand that stands out and lasts, you need meaning to your brand. Meaning. People at the end of the day don't care about your details about human design or gene keys, and they can get through a million of hashtags on Instagram alone. You need to give meaning to your brand, and you need to keep repeating that meaning over and over and over and over and over again. A lot of y'all get really comfortable by trying to come up with new stuff to say all the time. And I think why this happens is a lot of good people with their brands aren't actually understanding how to bring new people into their world. So they are speaking to the same people over and over. And then they worry about repeating themselves and boring people. Your brand is not, and your business is not to entertain people. Your content is not to entertain people. Your free content is to move people into your paid content. And if you don't have that intention, you don't have a business, you have a charity. And charities don't make money. So we want to look at how can we intentionally create a brand that stands out, and that is giving it meaning that connects emotionally with people. So that is your homework to do for today. It's going to start in the show notes with the BG5 and Brand Archetypes quiz. That's going to help you discover your archetype. When you finish that, if you want to jump into Brand by Design 101, my signature course, you have $100 off. There's a coupon code for those that finish it. You get $100 off on Brand by Design 101. And if you're looking to dive into things personally with that one-on-one time, we have brand VIP days for those that are new or pivoting or require clarity. And then the Done For You Brand to Movement Accelerator, which is quite literally done for you. We meet for 15 minutes after you fill out this long ass intake form. We meet for 15 minutes. I take it away. I create everything that's included in it. It's turning your brand into a movement. I have the deliverables written on the sales page, and I send it off to you with ChatGPT prompts so you can carry on brand cohesion. If you are looking for month to month, I do have the Outlaw Words Co. as a new department of my business where that's done for you content creation and copywriting. But there's options. I got you. I got you in creating your movement in 2025. But either way, what we have to do, what we must do, what the market is demanding is to have a brand that generates meaning and emotional connection. Those are the brands that are going to stand out. All right, my friends, I'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day. Talk to you soon. Bye.